This is a synopsis of the article entitled Reining in the Risk of Cloud Computing. What is cloud computing? Cloud computing is the practice of using a network of remote servers hosted on the internet to store, manage, and process data, rather than a local server or personal computer. There are three types of clouds: public clouds, private clouds, and hybrid clouds. Public clouds are a standard infrastructure and software model maintained by an outside service provider through the internet. It can either be free of charge or pay per use. Private clouds are one organization, one tenant. It uses a firewall to protect an organization's data from third parties. It allows additional control and self-management over data not available in a standard third-party infrastructure. And hybrid clouds have some properties of each. Customer internally manages some resources, the provider manages others. Cybersecurity is a very large threat to businesses operating on the internet. 62% of corporate boards of directors now feel it's the number one non-financial risk that their company faces. Private company board of directors find it the number one concern of all risks, and 20% of audit committee members cite data privacy and protection as one of the greatest risks. Cisco forecasts that the amount of traffic on the internet will triple in the next 3 years, from 2.6 zettabytes to 7.7 zettabytes per year. There are several benefits to cloud computing. It's more cost efficient. You can have fewer employees in IT departments and less equipment is needed. It can be paid for in a pay-per-use system of accessing the software, data storage, and IT infrastructure, as opposed to having to put all those costs up front. It's scalable, so the system can function when there's heavy use, and this is really important to seasonal businesses that have very high traffic to their sites during certain times of the year and not so much during others. It improves internal and external collaboration, and it's available anytime and anywhere. There's an increased risk of having data stolen when information is migrated from private servers to the cloud. So it's essential that customers do their due diligence in selecting a provider. They need to think about such questions as what can we do to limit risk? What do we still control versus what's now outside of our control? Does the provider use appropriate levels of encryption and security monitoring? What's their service record? Are they compliant with privacy regulations? There are three types of cloud service: infrastructure as a service, software as a service, and platform as a service. When folks first started using cloud computing, they wanted to reap the benefits of scalability in particular, and engineering firms and design firms wanted access to large infrastructure systems that their company may not have been able to purchase. That was infrastructure as a service. The next level was software as a service. And once again, this was beneficial so that companies did not have to purchase their own software or design it. They could just use the software of others. And the highest level is platform as a service, which allows them to lease hardware and storage with adaptable operating systems to run existing software. All three of these types of systems increase efficiency by allowing that temporary scalability during the height of operations. And it puts large and small companies on the same footing for IT. The idea of cloud computing has been around for a really long time. Back in 1959, the father of artificial intelligence, John McCarthy, identified the need for time sharing of computers. In the 1980s, large companies began to sell excess capacity on their networks for storage and basic accounting applications. In 1997, academics coined the term cloud computing, but it only became part of the U.S. vernacular in 2006 when Google CEO Eric Schmidt made it a household term. Cloud computing was spurred by the increased bandwidth, which is the ability to transfer data on the internet. In January of 2014, Jack Woods wrote an article in SiliconANGLE that predicted the large shift to cloud computing. It's a little bit hard to read here. When I blew it up, I apologize, but it reads, in 2014, 51% of workloads will be processed in the cloud, with only 49% in traditional IT departments. 82% of companies would lower their costs by using cloud computing. By the end of the year, 13 billion would be spent in the U.S. on cloud computing. Traditional ID departments would be reduced by 14%. 59% of new worldwide spending on cloud computing services in North America, and on average, organizations using 545 cloud services. In 2015, the worldwide spending on cloud service will exceed $180 billion. Between 2014 and 2017, as Cisco predicted, the cloud workload will grow threefold. Here he predicted 3.7-fold. And global spending on cloud dedicated equipment will equal $79.1 billion by 2018. From 2014 to 2019, 44% growth in public cloud workloads. There are three main areas of concern when migrating to the cloud: data and application vulnerabilities, access and availability, privacy and data security issues, and legal issues. It's important to remember that the same risks exist if you have an in-house system or a cloud system. If the system goes down when you have in-house IT, it prevents access of the information. In cloud computing, there is access, which is the ability to communicate with the cloud server, and availability, which is the ability to use the provider's software and infrastructure. Once migration occurs, the same risks exist. If the system goes down, neither type of function is possible. It's critical that a company looking to hire a cloud service provider do their due diligence and ask about things like the ability to provide uninterrupted service. A denial of service attack is when a hacker overwhelms the cloud service provider's processing, storage, and applications. It makes the system run extremely slow and prevents or limits access. If the customer that is using this cloud service is billed for time used, denial of service can be extremely costly. A company needs to inquire about backup schedules, schedules of updates, how the company is monitoring for denial of service attacks. For example, single user limits can prevent or slow down an attack and also prevent one employee from a massive download that can make some data more vulnerable. This happened quite often. Years ago, we heard about when laptops were stolen and entire databases were on those laptops. There are thousands of providers. It's critical that you know whether or not they are US-based or not, and the chances of them being a going concern or if they could potentially go bankrupt. Half of all outages are on cloud systems. Customers need a backup plan, which may be hiring a second service provider. As stated prior, there are different types of clouds. Private clouds are single-user clouds, and they're more secure. Public and hybrid clouds have multiple tenants, so to speak, and they're not as secure, and each company on that shared service makes each other more vulnerable. Data storage clouds are most attractive to hackers. They could mean a loss of proprietary data, which could make a company lose its competitive advantage. They can cause damage to a reputation, as happened to Target in 2013 during the Christmas season. They need to understand providers' access controls and firewalls, as if in-house IT. Encryption is necessary during transmission and during storage. Nothing is foolproof, so users must plan for security breaches. There are several legal issues to consider: where the cloud company is located, where the info is transferred, accessed, and stored. There are many overlapping regulations, and in some instances there are no laws to address some of these issues as of yet. But if the system involves medical information, there may be HIPAA laws involved, and so it should really only be run on a private cloud service. Credit card storage, and then you have to be sure that the entity is PCI compliant. It could involve Sarbanes-Oxley, Gramm-Leach-Bliley, the FTC, the FCC, or state and federal laws. We're talking about private information, personal information, business, government, national security, and there's all different responsibilities with each of these types of data. How long must government emails be stored, or human resources materials showing legal compliance? All this information needs to be considered when choosing a provider. The rule of thumb: treat it as if you were storing the data on your own IT servers. Cloud contracts should be spelled out as to responsibilities of both the user and the provider.